Dead for Reals.
Hey, Chris O'Neill.
Adam Perry.
We're here to talk about one of the most famous film studios of all time, just celebrating an anniversary, the Shaw Brothers studio.
Shaw Brothers. Martial arts fans, kung fu fans.
Well, that's
Unite.
the thing. That was their bread and butter. But they also made horror films. They also made musicals and melodramas, just like every other studio. But just like what Hammer is noted for, it's horror, even though they made different types of films as well. Shaw Brothers is definitely known for their kung fu cinema. I don't know how much of a percentage because my math sucks, but I'd say 3/10 of their film library. They churned out between 1958 until their demise in the early 90s. They churned out almost 1,000 movies.
Holy crap.
I know. It's a lot of stuff.
Where do you get the money for that?
Well, I mean, you got smart business guys like the Shaws themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, I know the Shaw Brothers studio started in 1958.
Yep.
But Runjay Shaw, the eldest Ru Shaw, there's different ways to pronounce Runye Shaw. Mm-hmm. The organization began with a purchase of movie theaters back in the early 1920s.
Okay, that's kind of like how every studio.
Well, yeah. I mean, Lemley and all of them. They bought some movie theaters, and they tried to move into movie making. And so, in the early 1920s, they bought movie theaters, and they had their first studio was called the Unique Film Productions. That's and obviously, in Cantonese or Mandarin, it's translated differently, but that's the translation to English means unique. And they actually had China's very first talking picture in 1925 spring on stage. But, there's a lot of political disruption, obviously, in that industry, in the 30s, Japan and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So basically, they had to move to Singapore. And then the younger brothers, Runmi and Run, began touring films in tents.
Oh, wow.
They would use tents, and they had to gather up real estate that would soon form their distribution empire. So 1957, the Shaws had a lot of cinemas, but no product. Okay. They had nothing to screen. So the youngest brother, Run, the one who everyone knows is because, 1958, that's where they began. Is he created? That was when it was called Shaw Brothers. Mm-hmm. So technically, the Shaw Brothers have been around since the 1920s. Yep. But when they first labeled it Shaw Brothers was 1958. So 1961, they were like the biggest privately owned studio in the world. They were inspired by Henry Ford. Very quick
production line. Pump it out, get it out. Crowd
pleasers. They were carefully crafted, though. So they weren't I hate to use the Marvel movies of today, but they had less of a budget and their stories were more interesting. Now, granted, a lot of people were more it's the same thing over and over again. There's a lot of similarities in a lot of the plot movies over the years with the Shaw Brothers. Mm-hmm. And yes, they did horror movies, musicals, melodramas, but I mean, Kung Fu is the only ones I've seen. You've seen a couple of Shaw Brothers, right, Adam?
Yes, I've watched the Five Fingers of Death and the 36th Chamber of Shaolin. Those were popular ones when I used to pay for cable, and the Del Rio by Rodriguez there, he used to play those kung fu, and they're fun movies. They're really cool. I mean, as a martial artist and a martial arts fan, I mean, it's fun to watch, and it's cool to see those ancient arts fleshed out, like the Southern style kung fu with all the animal forms and stuff like that, and using the butterfly swords and the broads. So I mean, we talked about Bruce Lee briefly in our 1973 episode. I mean, this paved the way for him. And I also think what separated his films from the Shaw Brothers and what made him so popular was the Shaw Brothers, where the martial arts is beautiful and fantastic. It's just that it's fantastic. There's a lot of wire work.
Oh, some of them. Yeah.
Some of them. I mean, the ones I've seen, there's a lot of kind of fantasy wire work. And then you had Bruce Lee, who was bringing a realism to it.
Well, you're talking, the fantasy element was a Taiwanese filmmaker called King Hu. King Hu, he started off being with the Shaw Brothers. If you're looking to broaden your scope of action cinema, maybe you want to watch more kung fu cinema, Shaw Brothers really is an awesome place to start. I'm going to start off with Come Drink With Me. It's 1966 film. They call it Wuxia, probably mispronouncing it because Mandarin and Cantonese isn't up to par. But Wuxia is a fantasy type of action film where they have the wires. They're jumping up into the air. Cheng Pei, how often can we say a female martial artist, especially in the 60s? The 1960s, she was like the biggest star before David Chiang and then the Five Fingers of Death, Gordon Liu, all of them. 1966 is when Come Drink With Me came out. King Hu directed it. I think it was his last film with the Shaw Brothers too, because butting heads over creative styles. But King Hu would go on to make A Touch of Zen being one of them. Dragon Inn, most notably, he actually did a Dragon Inn a year later, and Dragon Inn is one of the best films of all time. Dragon Inn. Come Drink With Me, he had a lot of those ideas that would move into Dragon Inn, which he did on his own a year later. He moved out of the Shaw Brothers. But if you're looking to start with the Shaw Brothers, you've been kind of curious about it, Come Drink With Me is a movie I'd recommend. And Cheng Pei is no stranger. The first time I saw her was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Remember? You remember her?
Yep.
That was my introduction to her. And the funny thing is I'm a film snob. I watched some of the badly dubbed Godzilla movies. The thing about the Shaw Brothers, and if you look at their home video history, they kind of just dubbed it any way they wanted. The English dubs, they could say whatever they wanted. And that's the thing that bothered me when I finally saw the actual Japanese version of Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster. The whole original Japanese script, monsters fighting, that's the main plot of the movie. But the human part of the story, it was completely different in the Japanese language than the English dubs. They made the Japanese people look stupid. There's a lot of racial stereotypes there. I don't want to get into that too much. I didn't really watch any Shaw Brothers movies until within the past 5 years. I became I don't know if obsessed is the word. My wife would probably call it that. But they're just simple plots. You only can tell a story, 32 times, I've been told. But it's entertaining. Peking Man is the worst Shaw Brother movies I've seen. It's their take on King Kong.
Gotcha. Okay.
But we're focusing on the if you're looking to venture into the Shaw Brothers, Come Drink With Me is a good place to start. And you think Five Fingers of Death is a good place?
Yeah.
Now, when you watched it, Adam, what was your first take on it?
Such a fan of martial arts and practicing it myself. To me, it was just another way for me to just consume martial arts. Kind of my takeaway from it. It was fun. Referencing the realism and fighting with Bruce Lee and, before, referencing the wire work and stuff like that wasn't the right approach to it. I really enjoy seeing the different styles of martial arts. And again, when you're talking about Southern style Kung Fu with the animal, you're and Shaolin Kung Fu, you're watching and seeing very low stances, high windmilling type strikes and traps and stuff like that. It's beautiful stuff to watch. But again, that's kind of what separated Bruce Lee from these movies, is because you'd see four arms just windmilling at each other with a sword or something, Bruce Lee would just jab you in the face. What's really interesting, though? Jackie Chan is a student of Bruce Lee, was a student of Bruce Lee. Was he a student of Bruce Lee? Well, he called Bruce Lee, he referred to him as his master. In film, but Jackie Chan, I'm sure when Bruce was in China doing Enter the Dragon and stuff like that, and Jackie Chan was working his way through the extras and stuntmen, I'm sure he did work with Bruce Lee a little bit. But that was the thing about Bruce. Bruce Lee would always teach. He was always you could walk up and shake his hand and he'd give you a 30-minute lesson on how to trap someone's hand just by shaking their hand. Right. Well, and that's why he referred to him as his master, not only through the film stuff. But Jackie Chan, he is schooled in Southern style Kung Fu. Right. The eagle claw, the praying mantis, and so and that's what you get in his movies. The drunken style, But before he did even that, I wanted to make a point with Jackie Chan was actually a kid. He was in Come Drink With Me. Even though Cheng Pei said, no, he wasn't in that. His autobiography states he was a kid and he was featured in Come Drink With Me. I think that might have been his first movie. Right. Him and Sammo Hung were in several as extras in the Shaw Brothers. Yeah. In many Shaw Brothers movies. Yeah. Jackie Chan growing up, again, after going through his schooling with the Southern style Kung Fu, he morphed into that stuntman extra era, and he, until eventually he got noticed for his comedic and charisma talents,
well, he wanted to do his own, and they wanted him because he knew a lot of Bruce Lee's stuff. They wanted him to be the next Bruce Lee.
They wanted everybody to be
him in particular because they bonded well.
Yeah.
That's what Jackie Chan says anyways. Again, we'll never know. But Jackie Chan was slated to be like the next Bruce Lee. Return of the New Fist of Fury was the name of the movie.
Right.
They were like, oh, all hail the next coming of Bruce Lee. The movie had a lot of problems, and he wanted to do his own style. But we'll talk about Jackie Chan another time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the interesting thing about the Five Fingers of Death, Adam, is it was known as King Boxer in the homeland. Yep. Mm-hmm. And it was released in 1972 there, a year later in America. So, unfortunately, Americans got to see Fist of Fury first and The Big Boss first. Oh, no, it wasn't The Big Boss. It was
the Chinese Connection.
The Chinese Connection. Yep. Yeah, I think there's a couple of other titles floating around too.
Yeah,
they just label these movies whatever, and that's why I had a hard time when I was a kid watching even the Bruce Lee dubbed movies. I was very snobby, and I was just like,
they're Americanized.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of times they just made up the dialogue, and they just made up the dubs. Okay, read from this script, and it had nothing to do with the movie.
Right.
So that's why the Shaw Brothers were kind of like a comedic thing. Ha ha ha! It's so cheesy. It's so bad. Mm-hmm. They're actually high quality films.
Right.
Come to find out, and again, Tarantino. I have mixed feelings about some of Tarantino's work, but I am grateful that he spotlighted a lot of this Asian cinema, because without Tarantino, one could argue without Harvey Weinstein, the flawed guy that he was, we wouldn't have Tarantino. To
say the least.
But yeah, to say the least. But without Tarantino, we wouldn't really have any idea about what real quality Shaw Brothers movies were. We wouldn't know Wong Kar-wai or like Chungking Express, all these amazing Asian films. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful that Tarantino, the first time I saw a Shaw Brothers logo was Kill Bill. But going back to the Shaw Brothers, if you're looking, Kill Bill is obviously not a Shaw Brothers movie, even though the Shaws, gave him the blessing. Right. Because Run Run Shaw lived to be 104, I think. He passed away in like 2014. He was in his hundreds.
Holy crap.
But yeah, Run Run Shaw is the dominant brother in the Shaw Brothers franchise, because he was the brainchild. Rooney and Run Run, they did most of the production work on the films that we know. Mm-hmm. Again, there's a lot of films out there that are Shaw Brothers movies. There's a ton of horror movies that we don't even know about yet. But so Adam, you picked King Boxer as one of them. I picked Come Drink With Me. Another one I want to bring up, and it was early, since we're in the 70s era of the Shaw Brothers, is Blood Brothers. It came out in 1973. Chang Che. He's probably if you look at Hammer films, Adam, since you've seen a lot of Hammer films, Chang Che is probably to Shaw Brothers as Terrence Fisher is to Hammer.
Okay.
I mean, Chang Che just like every film was just like, oh my God, if you want to rate it by stars, each one is at least a 3.5, 4-star caliber movie. Mm-hmm. And I think Chang Che is there's a lot of American Western influence in a lot of Chang Che's movies, because they have the grandiose style of a Sam Peckinpah film.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, if you listen closely to a lot of the music cues, you'll hear some music cues for a few dollars more. Goldfinger. You'll hear a little bit of, Stalag 17, a little bit of, there's a lot of Western influence, especially with Chang Che's films, I've noticed. And Blood Brothers is a little more serious of a Shaw Brothers. Yes, there's the typical action, but this was not only Chang Che, but you had T. Lung and David Chiang. Now, those guys, there's at least 12 movies they did together, all three of those guys. And they call it like the either perfect triangle. We can call it the perfect trifecta. When you saw a Ching Che movie starring David Chiang and T. Lung, you knew you were in for one hell of a ride. Have Sword Will Travel, so take on Have Gun Will Travel. Yeah. But the Blood Brothers one is very interesting. You have two aimless bandits who attempt to rob. T. Lung is the guy they attempt to rob. They are unable to defeat them. They join forces, and they're soon like turning into their own little gangster franchise, as they're taking and robbing other people as well. But things change because T. Lung's character has huge ambitions, and he seeks position in local government. And we all know what happens with all the ambitions with local government. The guy soon becomes power hungry, and they're blood brothers, and obviously that gets tested quite a bit. And it's just got a good epic feel. And again, it's a plot we've seen a million times, but the way Ching Che presents it, it's just so fascinating. Of course, plenty of amazing action, but T. Lung's performance actually is quite good. You don't really look at a Shaw Brothers movies, what amazing performance. But T. Lung's performance, he actually nabbed some critic awards throughout the world. And he's quite good. I don't think I've ever seen a Shaw Brothers movie where you can actually, that is such an amazing performance, Yeah. Amazing action, yes. Yeah. Beautiful action, as you've pointed out, but performance-wise, T. Lung's performance is great. I highly recommend Blood Brothers. Again, epic action film, but there's a lot of heart to it, a lot of substance. Like most of Ching Che's movies, there's a lot of heart with his movies. So you wanted to bring up another movie, Adam?
Yep, the 36th Chamber of Shaolin.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which is, again, considered one of the greatest kung fu films of all time. It's spawned two sequels, Return of the 36th Chamber and Disciples of the 36th
Yeah, I know.
Yes. So, I mean, again, if you're a martial arts fan of martial arts and you haven't seen this movie, I mean, you give up or watch it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, whenever you look up Shaw Brothers, 36th Chamber of Shaolin is usually the first one on the list, followed by King Boxer.
Yes.
Those are the two, even if you don't know Shaw Brothers. Oh, I recognize the title 36th Chamber of Shaolin.
Yes, exactly.
And it's rightfully so. And Gordon Liu, I know Tarantino loved Gordon Liu. That's why he had him play two different characters in Kill Bill. But man, oh man, I mean, yes, Bruce Lee is the guy that's thought of as being the most charismatic martial artist. I don't think anyone's going to argue against that. Right. But the most acrobatic, the most athletic, Gordon Liu is near the top.
Yeah, I listen, Bruce Lee was a freak of Mother Nature. This guy just did physical things that just nobody will ever do again. But yes, no, you're absolutely right.
Gordon Liu doesn't get enough credit, and I'm glad Tarantino really put the spotlight and made me more curious about him. Yeah, I was like, wow, 36 Chambers of Shaolin. That's the same guy who played Pai Mei and Kill Bill, and he was the same guy, the Crazy 88's leader. And the guy is just so athletic. I mean, if we want to talk about dynamic, charismatic, acrobatic, you think of Gene Kelly. Right. If we want to talk about musicals, I would say Gordon Liu is the equivalent of Gene Kelly in the martial arts world, because the guy is just
graceful.
Graceful. Yeah. Well, not so much. See, I think of graceful, I think of like Fred Astaire or somebody like that. But athletic. Yeah. I mean, Gene Kelly was just so athletic with his maneuvers, and to me, Gordon Liu definitely shines. Sure, and he definitely needs to be near the top, if not the top.
Again, I mean, it's so hard to compare anybody else to Bruce.
Well, I know,
Bruce Lee's wife would even say like the guy didn't do sit-ups for sets; he did sit-ups for hours.
Oh, I know, and Chuck Norris actually believes that's what did Bruce in early, is because he overworked.
I mean, it could be. I mean,
there's a lot of theories about that, but getting back to the Shaw Brothers.
Right, sure.
So you've seen the 36 Chamber of Shaolin.
Yes. Yep.
The humor in that movie, it's like you didn't expect it.
Right.
And the first time I watched the 36 Chambers of Shaolin, I'm like, oh, it's going to be an action, serious, But there's a lot of comedic stuff, and Gordon Liu's timing is just boom.
Yes. Yeah, it's just, again, it's for a martial arts. This movie, like, it's up there with Enter the Dragon, Bloodsport. Any prolific martial arts movie. I mean, this movie's in your top 5.
Oh, it has to be.
It's of must see and should see and.
Right. And since we're talking about Shaw Brothers, we're talking about the movies we think are essential to the Shaw Brothers. And now, since we're talking about Gordon Liu, another Shaw Brothers essential, if you're looking to start consuming Shaw Brothers, the 8 Diagram Pole Fighter, 1983. It got released in 84. I mean, it was not directed by, Cheng Che, but Lau Kar Lung, who actually became a prominent filmmaker. But yeah, Gordon Liu. And it was supposed to. Alexander Fusheng was a rising star. He's my wife's favorite out of all the Shaw Brothers. And this guy, not only he had the Bruce Lee type charisma, but he had a lot of humor. So it's kind of like if you want to take a sense of popular martial arts, he is like a cross between Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. He wasn't like athletic, or he didn't have like that flair that Gordon Liu had,
right?
Or like graceful like David Chiang, for instance.
Yep.
But Fusheng was very entertaining. I know Cheng Che built him up, but he unfortunately died in an unfortunate car accident during the filming of the 8 Diagram Pole Fighter, because him and Gordon Liu were brothers in that movie. They played brothers. Mm-hmm. They were the sole survivors. Their whole family is massacred. They're prominent martial artists, the whole family, and they get shamed because they're all like slaughtered. So Alexander Fusheng's character is just, I guess, post-traumatic stress. He just can't shake it. He's just, all he thinks about is just killing who's ever in front of him, even his mom. And it's like, whoa. So he's got a lot of mental issues, and he's kind of sidelined for the rest of the movie. Whereas Gordon Liu's character, I can't go back to my family. I can't go back. So he becomes a monk. Mm-hmm. And from there, he learns the whole 8 diagram pole technique kind of thing, which is very fascinating. And again, it's to me, it's an essential, not only in martial arts cinema, but in cinema in general. I mean, you want to talk about some of the finest action sequences ever filmed, and it's just like some of the stunts that Gordon Liu does in that movie, jumping off the top of stuff, and some of them you don't see the wires.
No.
I mean, the movie's nearly 40 years old, and it's just such a great film that I revisit from time to time.
And that's just the thing about these movies, and for fans of this genre, this martial arts genre, you really should try to seek them out in the form that they were intended to be, because I mean, when you get a bastardized American version, it takes away, and it doesn't leave the impact that it should have on you,
right.
And unfortunately, that's what we do here in America. We have to Americanize everything, and unfortunately, it's what happens with a lot of the Shaw Brothers movies, the early Bruce Lee movies. It's all
and that was back then, but now thankfully these films have been brilliantly restored. Like the 8 Diagram Pole Fighter, Come Drink With Me. They both have separate editions that you can purchase through Arrow Video. They've beautifully remastered these movies. Yes, you can watch the badly dubbed English versions if you want to, but they're automatically set to their original language dubs, which is, I only watch the original versions because to me that's the only way to watch them. Yeah, because you'll actually get what the filmmakers wanted out of it. But I mean, that's the thing. You talk about American cinema, like Cheng Che. a lot of like Kurosawa, all of these guys were inspired by a lot of American Western films, novels. I mean, have sword will travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 8 diagram pole fighter from 1983-84 is definitely, to me, an essential Shaw Brothers. And there's a couple other ones I wanted to mention too. Again, if you're just starting out, you're curious about the Shaw Brothers. Another hugely popular one is the 5 Venoms, the 5 Deadly Venoms. There's like 2 or 3 different titles for that. I'm sure you've heard about this movie.
Yeah, I know. I've heard about a lot of them.
Yeah, it's another Ching Che film. And you've got Chiang as a martial arts pupil who faces 5 kung fu fighters, each of whom we were talking about animals. In this one, you have the centipede style, you have the snake style, the scorpion style, the lizard, and the toad, the 5 poisonous creatures of Chinese folklore. I know my wife had a hard time with this one because it's fantasy.
Right.
This is like fantasy martial arts. This is not the wuxia martial arts style, which King Hu popularized. Ching Che had, this was definitely more. I mean, this film was huge in the United States, though. I mean, this came out in 1978, unfortunately, after Bruce Lee had passed. I guess what the former marketing manager of one of the Hong Kong film companies, he attributed the success because of the unique and atypical martial arts styles and the fact that the Venoms were at the time nothing like any martial art performers U.S. audience has ever seen before. I mean, ever seen the centipede style before or since?
No.
Exactly.
No.
None of the Shaw Brothers movies before this had a scorpion style or centipede style. I mean, this is fantasy stuff, but it's also based in folklore. It's fun to watch that kind of stuff. I mean, our own folklore is fun to watch. The mythical lone gunman of the West, for instance, for American audiences.
Right.
Really, it became so huge over here in North America. The Wu-Tang Clan, the famous rappers.
Oh, yes.
They loved this movie. They sampled literally dialogue from the film sampled in their stuff. Obviously, the English dub versions, of course.
Right.
This was such a huge success. And of course, Tarantino, 5 Assassins, the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad. It all goes back to the 5 Deadly Venoms. Action sequences you have never seen. You go to a theater back, even in Hong Kong, to watch the 5 Deadly Venoms. No one had ever seen anything like that before on screen.
Yeah.
Maybe there were like real martial art moves, but I think they were just made for the film.
Yeah.
Because it's folklore. I mean, yes, those are the 5 poisonous figures of Chinese folklore, but to make them into martial arts styles, it's just brilliant.
Yeah. Speaking of real martial arts, I don't even think that there is.
No.
I mean, it's just like,
it's so unique that you haven't seen anything like it. I mean, who wants to duplicate that, you know?
Exactly.
And it's just so brilliant. And kudos again to Ching Che for executing it in such a fun way. Yeah, and I got another Ching Che movie that you should definitely check out. You especially, Adam, would like this one, The Boxer from Shantung. It's a gangster film. It really is a gangster film. A guy, a street urchin, wanting to be the boss. And he becomes the boss. What's the old saying? Heavy lies the crown. I mean, I'm kind of just jokingly summarizing what the movie's all about. But, I mean, it's the same length as Raging Bull, and it moves at a great pace. 2 hours and 9 minutes is a long time for a martial arts film.
Yeah.
It really is. The way Ching Che executes it is just so brilliant. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Chinese culture, a lot of Hong Kong culture as well that's referenced in the movie. A lot of people recommend their own essentials for Shaw Brothers cinema, but I go with that one too. The Boxer from Shantung. Somehow when Ching Che directed one of those Shaw Brothers movies, you knew you were getting something even more special than just a typical B-movie Shaw Brothers,
Right. Let's face it, when you're talking martial arts, you are talking violence.
Yes.
With martial arts, you can get the spiritual aspect of it, the Zen aspect of it.
Because you're a martial artist yourself.
Yeah. It's been said over and over. At some point, if you're training in martial arts, at some point you need to realize what you're talking about is someone trying to take your life and you having the potential to do it too.
Right.
So, I mean, so you watch these movies, they're violent because they're supposed to be, because what we're talking about and what we're practicing is violence.
But you're also, the most important thing though is self-discipline.
Exactly. Yeah. But again, I mean, but the core of it is, again, like you said, there's a huge discipline, self-control, and it's a way of life. Being a martial artist is a way of life. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of living. But again, the shadow over you while you're training is, again, this very real, very, legit, skills to protect you from the really bad. And, again, at some point, whether that's, you get into martial arts for self-defense or for fitness or for, just mental clarity, or the discipline or just some structure in your life, at some point, as you progress, you do have to come to terms that you are talking about something very violent, something very serious.
Yeah, because you could literally take someone's life with your one finger.
And again, and it's, again, when you watch these movies, they're exploiting that element of it, to a degree, to a fantastic degree, to say the least. I mean, because I worked in law enforcement for over 15 years of my life, and I'll be the first to tell you, what you see in the Shaw Brothers movies, what you see in the Bruce Lee movies does not work.
No.
It is for your entertainment.
Right.
But it is a violent world, and it's very real. Very
Absolutely.
real. So, and again, with martial arts, you need to come to grips with that at some point.
Right.
And these movies kind of do that for you in an entertaining way.
In a very entertaining way. Yeah. And again, Shaw Brothers Studios, I hope, if you're curious, I mean, there's versus the 80s when you had these badly dubbed, some of them were not even available on VHS in the 80s and 90s.
No.
Tarantino helped, the Weinstein Company had the Dragon Dynasty DVDs that came out. I think it was like 2008, 2009. But I mean, even then, some of the quality wasn't that great. But, thanks to Arrow Video, they haven't paid me for any of these things, but Arrow Video, they have two amazing Shaw Brothers box sets that you can grab. Sometimes they're at a decent price at different outlets. Just gotta, some of them are pricey, but if you're really serious about starting off with the Shaw Brothers, again, Come Drink With Me came out in 1966. That's a standard version you can get on its own. The 8 diagram pole fighter, that's a separate Shaw Brothers release you can get on their own. They're both available through Arrow Video, but they're both separate from the box set. I mean, that just shows you these two movies are that significant that they can stand alone. Those are two essentials where I highly recommend you start off. And, of course, the 36 Chamber of Shaolin, King Boxer, the Boxer from Shantung, Blood Brothers. Blood Brothers is actually available through Shout Factory. They went on a huge spree. They released 5 or 6 box sets of Shaw Brothers. Boom, within like a year. They just went crazy, and you can get them all. They're nice 2K restorations. They're really nice.
And isn't that the cool thing about modern technology that we now have access to these movies? Because, I mean, back in the 80s and 90s. And even the 90s, you couldn't.
No.
Unless you really, really tried hard, you weren't finding anything like this.
No, and that's the thing. You get something badly dubbed from another VHS copy. You get a VHS copy of a VHS copy, and it's really bad, horrible version of 36 Chambers of Shaolin, which was I think probably called something else, and 5 Fingers of Death, which it's King Boxer, and that title is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and and especially in America, I mean, we're so isolated from otherworldly culture.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're living in a time where all of this culture in this cinema is within our grasp, and we don't have to go very far to find it. Click of a button, you can have all of this stuff delivered to your house. I mean, you couldn't have that in the 80s. There was just no way.
No, and not unless it translated into American dollars. Again, I know we're talking show, but you're talking about Enter the Dragon. I mean,
right.
The only reason why we know of the other Bruce Lee movies because Enter the Dragon was so big.
It was backed by Warner Brothers. That's why.
And Warner Brothers was like, hey, we can make money off this guy. What else did he do?
Right.
Well, the Shaw Brothers didn't really have that in the United States. They haven't.
No. They had a good distribution, and it was popular, but it didn't scream like, oh my God, like.
Yeah. And so, you didn't get the 1,700 movies, flooding your theater screens in the 80s and 70s, like what Bruce Lee ended up doing post life.
Right.
You
right.
know?
Right.
So,
well, that's the thing. You could see Shaw Brothers movies in theaters before Bruce Lee.
right.
But they're badly dubbed, and there was no life afterwards. I mean,
Right.
some of them found, again, they didn't have the backing of Warner Brothers back then, but now, Arrow Video you can get 28 of the Shaw Brothers movies through Arrow Video, probably going to be more this coming year. But Shout Factory, 5 box sets within a year. That's a huge chunk of the martial arts Shaw Brothers. 88 films, a boutique label over in England, has I think you can get up to 12 or 13 Shaw Brothers movies. One of them, one of their horror movies, which I have yet to see because I'm still working my way through the martial arts films they're releasing at such a rapid pace you can't catch up. But
there's over 1,000 movies.
I know. I know, but most of them are not available to watch.
Yeah.
And I hope that this resurgence, because these Shaw Brothers films do exist, so hopefully we can get some more remastered. Mm-hmm. And because I'd love to see, just out of curiosity, some of their comedies, their melodramas, their musicals, and more of their horror movies. There's only I think there's 2 of their horror movies that you can actually watch. And 88 films released them, I think, within the past 5 years. I've only had a huge interest within the past 5 years myself with the Shaw Brothers, and I feel so bad that it's I didn't want to watch the badly dubbed versions. They look so terrible.
Right.
Me being such a film snob,
But again, that's American bastardization of
but there is the Hong Kong filmmakers loved American cinema too, and assistant director on King Boxer was none other than John Woo himself.
Wow.
And he went on to a lot of big things.
Sure.
So a lot of these Shaw Brothers talents, they moved on to bigger and better things.
Well, and again, but isn't that the goal, is to always break in America?
Worldwide. The Shaw Brothers, the 4 Shaw Brothers themselves, they wanted to have movies seen in their home base.
Right.
But then, it's hey, we want to reach the rest of the world. To be worldwide is everyone's goal.
Yeah.
And they reached it finally. It took, unfortunately, the 80s, they started fading a little bit, and then early 90s, I know Jet Li did a Shaw Brothers film, which was interesting. But then I guess the studio disbanded finally in 2012, but they really didn't really make any movies of note past the early 90s.
Well, didn't they? I'm looking at the notes here. Didn't they get bought out by Celestial?
Yeah, Celestial. I forget.
Celestial Pictures.
Celestial Pictures.
Yep.
They did purchase the Shaw Brothers movies, but I'm talking. Movie output, actually making new movies. They kind of just in the early 90s they started disbanding because people weren't flocking to see him anymore.
Right.
Because Ching Che was their big filmmaker, and once he stopped doing it, it was okay,
Right.
But they still had some good movies, the 80s they had some bright spots, but no, it's just it's unfortunate they couldn't keep the studio going. There were no more Shaws to take the helm. But thanks to Celestial Pictures, they, along with these boutique labels, have really been impactful at getting these B movies seen, so they could say, oh, this is more than just a B movie. It's actually quality movies.
Yeah.
It's it's a multiverse kind of thing, Marvel.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Only they didn't have $300 million to play with, or $500 million.
Yeah.
So
one can argue, some of their movies are better than
Well, I have yet to see Peking Man is probably the weakest Shaw Brother movie I've seen. I've seen about 100 of them. That's been the weakest movie I've seen so far. But it's still it wasn't meant to be oh wow, this is amazing knockout cinema. It was just It was just a kind of their take on King Kong, if you will.
Right.
More cheesy version of King Kong. But again, if you've always been interested in the Shaw Brothers, or maybe after hearing this conversation, you want to discover them. these movies that we mentioned, again, I'll name them one more time: Come Drink with Me, King Boxer, 36 Chambers of Shaolin, Five Deadly Venoms, Blood Brothers, Boxer of Shantung, and the 8 Diagram Pole Fighter. Those are the best movies, in my opinion, to start your Shaw Brothers journey. Maybe you're listening and you're a huge Shaw Brothers fan. Tell us which movie you love the most and why. Comment on our YouTube channel. You can also comment through SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X. Just reach out to us. Give us some feedback. Or if there's a type of genre or type of movie, maybe it's a horror movie that you want us to dissect, reach out to us through social media. Send us a message. Scared for Reals, I'm Chris O'Neill.
Adam Perry.